Hi guys, in this video we're going to start a new project.
Gruffy Crow.
Okay, so if you guys watch many videos on my channel, you know I already have a pretty massive Beastman army project underway, but I do like to have more than one thing going at once. And one of the other games I'm kind of getting some games in here and there of is Burrows and Badgers. I already have a nice little pirate crew, and I've just been picking up a few sort of models I like the look of here and there. But for this time, I've picked up this set of models, all specifically to work together as a very thematic little force. I've not ran the numbers, so I don't know if this is a good warband yet or not. But I like the idea of the themed force, and yeah, this is what we ended up with. So let's have a look at the models to start with, in no particular order, but kind of, I guess, actually, this top one inspired the whole thing. So this is the Shrew Knight Errant, and he is riding a stag beetle. I think it's the only mounted Burrows and Badgers model. There's a whole bit of backstory and sort of fluff for these guys in the book, that they sort of grow up and go off to find the world with their stag beetle and go on adventures, which I loved. So yeah, all the models in this force are shrews. So actually, while we're starting at the top, it was that model and then this one and the idea of them together which did actually inspire this plan. Baron Filbert de Vere. See, he is also a shrew, but I just thought there was something very medieval lord about him. So the Burrows and Badgers range obviously goes from fairly Dark Ages looking models, I think they call them the wildlings, right up to some sort of almost Victoriana type ones for the city dwelling animals. But I love that a few of these shrews had this very medieval vibe. So I like the idea of him stood on his castle wall while his shrew knights rode out in a very sort of Bretonian style. So to that end, we also have a few more warriors. This is the shrew heroine. So I love this shield, and we're going to use this shield as a sort of inspiration, I think, for the sort of heraldry. Everyone's going to match. We have the shrew watch beast. So we've got another nice big cloak there to play with. Heavier armor by the looks of things. And sort of helmet-wise, we're not too far off the sort of shrew knight. Then, to add some bodies to the force, we have the shrew grub handler. So he's trying to train that grub and sort of organise that across the battlefield like an attack dog, which I also thought sort of fit the sort of medieval vibe quite well for what I wanted. And obviously, where would a grub handler be without additional grubs? And I saw these in the cabinet at the day and just knew that, yeah, if I was going to have the handler guy, he needed his sort of chargers. So that's the force. I'm probably going to have him as the sort of leader, the sort of fancy looking knight with all the gear as a second possibly, and then we have sort of the soldiers and the sort of almost the peasantry. If we do need some more bodies to sort of pack this out, I do have some more shrews. I think I've got more or less all the shrews now, but we have this lady, not quite as medieval. We've also got this lady as well, similar vibes off these. So really, yeah, the local villagers getting involved. And if they really need an extra hand, we've got my shrew pirate crew. So I think the colours I'm going to go for is yellow and blue. I think they're pretty classic. They're nice and bright. They're going to be quite striking. We won't be following that onto, say, the sort of townsfolk, because that'll be more of a... They'll be completely sort of separately painted. And their colours I quite enjoy painting. So first thing, we need to get them all to this stage. So we need to get them glued down and put some base sand on. Before we do put any sand on, I want to replicate this shield to there. Now I'm going to do that in green stuff, and I probably could just sculpt it on using this one as a reference and copy it across. But we're going to try something that will probably sell the effect a little bit better if it works, and may even be a little bit quicker. This is Instamold. This is very worn out, dirty Instamold that I was using as a sort of push mold for making bases. So this is something I sculpted, and this stuff can be reused. So all I need is some hot water, something a bit like this, and we are going to just shove our Instamold back in there, even after only a couple of seconds. Oh, there we go. I'm going to make a nice smooth side by folding it over repeatedly. Make sure it's as hot as can be, and I'm going to press this into the model. So I can go and dip this in cold water now, or just leave it until it cools down. Okay, these have had a little while to completely sort of reach room temperature. We've got 3 versions of it. We're going to take the mixed up green stuff and we're just going to put a thin layer in here. So one of the reasons we're using this is the sort of heraldry across this army is that I picked these guys up in York last week at Vapnatech, the York Wargames show. But after visiting York for a day or so, I continued my adventures up to Newcastle just for a quick look around and then spent the rest of the week in Edinburgh. While I was in Newcastle, obviously, I went to have a little look at the castle of Newcastle. And while I was visiting the castle, I noticed these set into the pavement in the sort of general area, which to me bore an uncanny resemblance to this shield. So I have decided that this is the official insignia of Shrewcastle. And so that is the name of this project. Okay, these have had all night to cure, so we're just going to pop these back out of their little moulds. Not great, not captured the sharpness maybe. Okay, they all have issues, but I think this is our best one. So this is the shield we're covering, this is the new shield. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just get like an emery board. I'm just going to file down the back of here a bit, rub away some of this excess. We should also be able to trim some of this, braid it down a little bit here, till we've got something a bit more of a sensible and very thin shape. Might try and take a bit more off the back there, because the shield, because the original shield's got quite a bit of thickness, and I don't really want to mess with that too much. Though it probably wouldn't hurt just to knock a little bit of that off. If we just put a little tiny amount of gel super glue on there, make sure that's all spread out. We'll line this up where we want it to be. Okay. I think that's been a success. While this is still somewhat malleable though, I think I will try and just reinforce some of those details with this sculpting tool, especially in these little crenellations. So the next step is just going to be to get some more green stuff and just sort of line up this edge. On this shield, we've got like two parts. We've got like a fabric part obviously, and then the metal part. So we can try and make this kind of follow that a little bit. I'll hide some of the thickness. And then we've got this rolled edge at the top, which kind of didn't survive being cast out, but that's fine. We can kind of just beef that up and run it down the back there. But I don't have to try and worry too much about getting the castle and the size and shape perfect with sculpting it, because we've got the bulk of that done. And here we have it with the edges filled in. Once it had cured as well, I just took a knife and just smartened up some of the edges. And I'm pretty happy with it. I think once that's sprayed, you'll not be able to tell the difference. So part of the process for getting these guys based up is going to be to try and disguise the puddle bases into these bases. For that, I'm just going to use a little bit of this pre-mixed filler, and I'm just going to use that to sort of smooth around the edge of the two bits. So next up, once I've smoothed that out a bit, we've got just regular PVA, and then as usual, a bit of sand. And now I'm going to go and throw some Colourforge Standard Grey on these guys. And then I gave them a dusting with this matte white. And then I didn't touch them again for 15 months. But we're on it again now. So, since I started this video, as I said, 15 months have passed. And recently, a new edition of Burrows and Badges came out. And that has prompted me to start a new campaign at my local sort of wargaming place. And I could have used my Otter Pirates, which are fully painted. And I even gained some members in the last year or so. But I decided to get these guys finished instead. We have a few more new recruits for the Warband, or at least for the general thing. We have a pair of shrew traders and a piper, which is a conversion I did. And he's going to be my counts as bagpiper, because in order to get the grubs into the Warband, they've had to be witch hunters or hill folk. So I've gone for hill folk. Although they don't fit the standard look for hill folk with all the sort of tartan and claymores, I feel like these could still be some sort of borderland types with our little independent baron and his sort of crowd. He still doesn't have a place in the Warband, and as you can see, I've been using this guy, and I actually was using this guy as well to try and test colour schemes for these guys. We also can't fit her at the start of Warband because I want to make room for this piper. So, back to the colour schemes. I think this is the one that I've settled on. Some of these others were sort of using slight variations, but only after I think I'd nailed the colours that I wanted. There are 3 types of shrew in Britain. There's pygmy shrews, and then there are common shrews and water shrews. As you can see, water shrews are a lot darker, And that's why I chose that colour scheme for my pirate shrews.
Yarr!
So yeah, here they are in this sort of black and white. Now I could have carried on with that theme, but I thought just for a bit more interest, we would go for common shrews for these guys. And that's why I've gone for this much lighter colour scheme. In order to come up with what paints I needed, because I am sort of mildly colourblind, so I always struggle to start with to get going with what colours are going to match a sort of photograph or reference best. I actually used an app called Miniature Painter Pro. So the way the app works is you select an image, and the image I chose was this nice illustration I found, which had the sort of colours and vibe that I wanted. So I just loaded that into the app, and I sort of zoomed into the fur sections where there were some lighter or darker bits, and I sort of clicked around, and I was filtering it to the Pro Acryl paints and sort of Duncan Rhodes and a couple of others, and like Citadel that I knew that I had. And some of the best matches was this dark golden brown and golden brown, but also there was a lot of flesh tone sort of matches, including the Duncan Rhodes flesh wash. There was also a lot of metallic gold matches, which didn't seem relevant. But if I can remember correctly, the warm flesh was on there as well. So I've sort of come up with a system using these. I'm starting off with the dark golden brown, and that's all over anywhere there's fur. Next up, it's time for this golden brown, and I'm going to apply this in 2 stages. First up, we're going to draw in the sort of pattern. So under the chin and down the cheeks, we've got this much lighter colour. And then once that's done, we're doing a rough dry brush over all those darker parts, because we want to keep the colour that we did first as the dominant colour, but we just want to bring out those details and fur textures and stuff like that. Now to the bit I'm a little bit dubious about. We're going to try a bit of this warm flesh, and with this I'm just trying to pick up the texture on the bits of the fur that we painted, specifically the lighter brown. Something a bit like that. And then last but not least, we are going to do the flesh wash. So I'm applying this to sections like the top of the head here, further pulling out those textures around the eyes, tops of the legs, just to make more of those textures that we tried to pull out before, and also sort of darken this and even give it a bit of a richer colour. And we can even use it to blend in a bit of those lighter highlights. I tried this with sort of earthshade and like sepia tones. The sepia tones weren't too bad, but they weren't quite doing what I wanted. This is definitely, to my eyes at least, the winning combo. Now for the bugs, I was quite disturbed to notice that they actually, some of the photos I found of them, quite resembled a sort of human skin tone. So I'm going to start these guys off with shadow flesh. Now I was using my go-to Midland flesh as a second layer. I've been experimenting with replacing these with other paints. So that's the Midland flesh, that's the warm flesh, quite a lot brighter. So we'll stick with the Midland flesh for now, I think, for this layer. Then we give them a coat of this flesh shade, and when that's dry, we should end up something like this, which is my test one. And I'm going to hit this with another dry brush of the Midland flesh, nice and gentle, just to pull back out some of the details. And then I think I will hit them with the warm flesh as a final highlight. For the head and the legs, I started off with a Mornfang brown and then an Agrax Earthshade wash to get them to this stage. And then I'm going to go in with the Scrag brown, being careful to pick out all the little segments on the legs. I'm trying to achieve the blend on their heads through sort of putting quite a solid patch on and then using a wet brush to sort of blend out the edges, feather those out, and then thinner coats of paint with the wet brush, sort of just to build up the brighter colour in the middle. And then I'm just going to repeat that step again with the Deathclaw brown. This time just add in a very sort of top highlight just to pick up the segments again, and another sort of layer to the fade on the middle. And I think that's these guys pretty much complete. So for the last bit of this video, we're going to think about heraldry. As we discussed earlier, the castle symbol is going to be the sort of symbol of our little baron, the symbol of Shrewcastle. And I want to invoke that sort of Bretonian, medieval-y sort of vibe. So to that end, I picked up a few new colours. This wonderfully descriptive blue and a warm yellow. And I'm going to do sort of a half and half colour scheme using these, I think. I might even see what that looks like with a green castle. I think we're going to test this out on the shield first, just to see if I like the look of the colour scheme. Then we'll dress the Lord up, see if we like that. and then we'll roll it out if we do. I'm not going to go straight in with these though. I've got no doubt they would cover, but I'm going to go for these sort of darker base tones first. Okay, so I jumped ahead a little bit. I liked what we were up to, and I have rolled it out and more or less finished off the rest of this mini now. So to the blue, I added some sky blue on top of the blue, and just today I picked up some bright green and some pale yellow. So we're going to add these as well. This pale yellow is very pale, almost white, and when I was in Element today, it was very similar to the ice yellow that a couple of other manufacturers use, so I'm trying to be very sparing with it, but I think it's definitely what I need to make these pop. On the back of this girl, I did try some freehand as well, that I'm not particularly happy with. It looks a bit sort of crude, but I think that really pale yellow is really helping there as well. I think for some of these big expanses though, it's a little bit too stark. I've just mixed up a midpoint, I think. I'm not really one for overly stark highlights, and this pale certainly gives a bit of opacity to the warm yellow. The rest of the guys are a sort of similar layer on this one, which is the one I lost and then found again. I even tried a bit of weathering on this shield, but I did that before I got this this new brighter yellow. So I'm just going to try and add a little bit just to make some of this pop without interfering with my weathering too much. I also tried a tiny little freehand on this banner, which I'm more happy with. For the beetle, I used some iridescent green paint and then sort of washed it repeatedly to try and get this sort of glazed look with a slight metallic tint to it, to try and get as close to the photo as I could find as possible. And I wanted that body to contrast with the sort of barding, the drapery there. And I think that's come out quite nicely. The one thing I haven't done on this one yet is bring the armor up to the same shine that I've got on this one. The armor is a combo of steel and then a black wash, steel and then bright steel, to give us quite a nice sort of contrasting set of armor. And I think even where there's only some tiny little spots of armor, it still makes it pop. I'm thinking this guy might need some freehand as well. The version of this on the website has some terrific, amazing freehand, which is the sort of thing that I'd like to sort of be able to achieve, especially maybe on this sort of under tunic, maybe leaving the cloak quite plain. However, I'm not sure if my skills are up to it to do a sort of little set of probably green towers. And there's my attempt, a freehand pattern on the sort of under tunic there, the little castles. I think it's gone quite well. I might try and touch up a little bits now I've seen it on camera. But yeah, it's added a bit more interest to the model, keeping the back quite plain. Okay, so with our final highlights dry, it's time to finish these models off. So we're going to look at the basing now. I think I'm going to start off, rather than tufts, with some little lumps of this loose foliage, and then fill in the gaps with some of this summer mix. Normally I'm a big fan of sort of grass tufts and flower tufts like these, but because of the relative size of these models, I'm not sure I could quite get away with it. So I've got an old knackered cheap paintbrush here, and I'm just going to start by blobbing on where I want these weeds to go, and then I'm going to take some little pinches of the foliage and press that into the dots, so we get something a little bit like that. And then I'm going to go back in. Maybe I should wait for this first lot to dry, really. We don't really want too much of the bare ground showing, to be honest. And then on this much bigger tray, we're going to do basically the same thing. Now normally I'd give these a good hard blow to get the grass to stand up, but I was had to be very gentle because I noticed that the sort of weeds wanted to fly away with it. You will notice that's quite white at the moment and kind of pale, but once the glue dries, that'll be clear and that'll sort of darken up a bit. And I've already changed my mind midway round and added some tufts actually, just to add a little bit more interest to the whole warband. Okay, I think I'm going to call these guys done. I am really happy with the way these came out. I was a little bit worried about the blue and yellow looking a bit messy. It's a lot brighter than I normally paint. And there's a few other things I was worried about, like trying to make the fur convincing. and just basically all the colours on the little beetles was something I'd never tried before. But yeah, no, I think these have come out fantastically. They look great as a group. They look fantastic on the table. And this is the bit where I would say I can't wait to get them out on the table. But actually, part of the reason I've rushed this video out is that they've been on the table loads. They have seen 5 or 6 games now, I think, maybe, in the current campaign. And characters like my little hero Adam here, we recruited him after the second game because I'd found a magic sword. He then instantly rushed to his death, but in the next game he redeemed himself by taking out a rogue sorcerer. So these guys have already got some history and lore bound up in them, and hopefully they've got a few more adventures left of this campaign. So that's all for this video. Let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed seeing this Burrows and Badgers content as much as I have enjoyed making it and playing it recently. Let me know what your favourite Burrows and Badgers model is and what more you'd like to see on this topic. I am thinking about maybe doing some little how to play videos. As ever, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.